Hi, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of the Cyber Hero Adventure Show, honoring our nation's veterans and their families. Words cannot adequately express our gratitude for the sacrifices that veterans and their families have made and continue to make every day. But I'll try. Thank you. Our special guests today are from the Turner family, who have a long and honorable tradition of selfless service to America. Let's welcome Bob Turner to the show. Hey, Bob.
Hey, good morning, Gary. Happy Veterans Day.
Thank you to you and your family as well. I mean, what a privilege to have the opportunity to listen and learn about the distinguished service that you and your family and your dad, may he rest in peace, have provided to our country. And one of the, I think, important aspects of Veterans Day is that it should be Veterans Year, and it should be Veterans and their families year. It should be a 365-degree sense of gratitude, to people who have served our country. Because I don't want to mangle the quote, but I think someone said democracy is not free. So tell us a little bit about your origin story, and then we'll invite a couple other folks from your family to the show.
Sure, great. So for me, I was born into the family, and the spirit of service was already there. Dad had been in the Air Force for, I don't know, decade or so before I came around, and he had service in the Korean War, and the family had moved about quite a bit, and that's one of the things about our family is that mobility is interesting, because none of us were born except for my brother Dave and my sister Linda, none of us were born in the same state or same city. So that's just one of those things that is a part of military service, is traveling around. I joined the Navy right after high school, sort of like Dad, and I went on to do some interesting things. I was in the U.S. Navy's submarine force for about 9 years, and then I received a commission and ended up in the surface fleet. So they say with airplanes, what goes up must come down, but with submarines, what goes down doesn't necessarily get to come back up. So I had a great career. Dad was actually present at my commissioning, so maybe a little bit about that later. But it was great, having had his example to go through life, knowing that this was a noble cause. It was a noble thing that we were doing, serving in the military. And my brother Skip was also in the Coast Guard for a career. At one time, we calculated the number of years of service that the Turner family had returned to the country, between Dad's full career, my brother's full career, my full career, and that of grandchildren, nieces, and nephews. Dad's entire lifespan was covered as far as having paid back service to the country.
Wow, that's incredibly impressive, and thanks so much. And so we can welcome Skip to the show.
Hello.
Hi, it's so nice to see you. Thank you for everything you've done for our country, and maybe you can share with our audience a little bit about your origin story.
Well, being the oldest, I was born. He had gotten out of the Air Force and went back in, and I was born in Massachusetts, of all places. The first one, I just remember being pretty proud of him at different times when I'd go to visit him at different posts he had. It kind of informed my decision to join, and I ended up joining the Coast Guard. The white boats with the red and blue racing stripe.
Exactly. What prompted you to select the Coast Guard, for your service?
I saw a video when I went into their recruiting office. It showed the boats in the surf, flipping her over, and all the various rescuing, and it clicked with me.
And where geographically did you serve?
I served from Southern California through Alaska, all the way into the Bering Sea.
Oh, okay. I mean, not to get off on a tangent, but deadliest catch?
Yeah, that I've been there.
Did you ever have the opportunity to, do some of the life-saving sorts of things way out in the Bering Sea?
I was on a vessel, the boat when we did some rescues. Yes, I've done rescues off the Oregon coast. Mainly, I was a communicator. I was a radioman.
Yep.
So
Wow.
when you were calling help, I was the guy that answered.
Wow. I mean, that's so interesting and so important to be able to be calm in the storm.
So
Yeah.
Gary, I have to brag on my big brother for a second. He is a savant-like character. I got to visit him when he was at the Newport, Oregon facility he was at, and Group North Bend, I think is what they called it at the time. And so we got to walk into the room where he was sitting at the console there, and you could hear Morse in the background, and he was writing with a pencil. And then you could hear, voice broadcast going on, and then he picked up the mic and he was doing a voice broadcast. So talk about multitasking.
Wow.
I keep that picture in my head because that is hard to do.
Yeah, go ahead. You want to say, was it hard to do?
It's a very much learned ability. You have a lot of trial and error. There are people that can do it and the people that can't.
Wow. Well, that's incredibly interesting. We'll dive a little bit more into that a little bit later in the show. And in the meantime, we want to welcome James. Hi, James. Welcome to the show.
How are you?
I'm terrific. Thanks to you and your family, for your service. And why don't you tell us a little bit about your origin story?
Well, they basically had it all covered. My dad was in the Coast Guard. My uncle was in the Navy, and my grandpa was Air Force. So I thought I'd go Army just to get it covered.
I mean, are you like half joking, or is that really?
No, that was I had to choose one that hadn't been taken by the family yet. So Army was the way to go.
And how old were you, more or less, when you realized or you made the decision that you wanted to follow in your family's footsteps to serve the country?
As long as I can remember, I don't think there was really a date. Everybody in the family served. So it was a family tradition. It was great. So I just had to pick which branch I had to go into.
Of course, it's widely understood and known in the military, community that these are generational kinds of decisions, that families serve. That if there's one member who serves, much more likely to have other family members, that serve. Is that a valid kind of assumption?
Yeah, I think we all have a draw to service, and it's the example that Dad gave, and as far back as I remember, tracing genealogy, he was the first in his family to serve, and so it just kind of snowballs from there. But it's an honorable thing to serve the country, this great country, and it's a great start, and I remembered, my initial plan was join the Navy, do a couple of years and get out and go work for a radio store in town that I happen to know. And that never happened, of course, because I got in there and it was a lot of opportunity I saw in front of me outside of the hometown there.
Indeed. And, speaking of hometowns, we'd like to welcome Dave to the show. And one of the things that we were talking about just prior to hitting the record button today is what about the people who took care of homes? whether it be spouses or relatives, so that our nation's veterans had robust lives to return. So, hi, Dave. Welcome to the show.
Oh,
So Dave, when your dad, was serving, what maybe you can share with us some experiences of what it was like, and were you concerned for his safety and things like that?
oh yeah, always concerned about his safety.
And how did it kind of manifest itself? Did your dad, how often did he get to communicate? I imagine not so often during those days.
Not so much. Lots of telephones, expensive phone calls, having
And
him describe where he was at, and it was pretty good.
and so what did you do during this kind of period?
Just watched and observed, and then my brothers followed the same suit, and somebody had to stay home and guard the home front.
Indeed, and you must have felt very proud. Is that
Oh, every day.
Really? And were you able to kind of express that to them?
A little bit. They knew I was proud.
Yeah, because it's an interesting experience depending on when people served. There were other rather intense political things going on in the United States, and that's one of the my main motivations to shine the light on a family such as yours. So Bob, maybe you can share with us some stories, or James, earlier you mentioned your dad was great at telling jokes. You want to share maybe one of his legacy jokes?
The one he always tell at the end was, and I'm not sure I can tell it as good as him, was Mary had a little lamb, the doctor nearly cried. Old MacDonald had a farm, the doctor nearly died.
Yeah, if you look up some of the greatest dad jokes ever told, I'm sure there's at least a dozen or so of dads in there.
So tell her you can't tease our audience without now saying one. Can you think of another one, Bob?
So he liked to see what was going on the television, and he would like to give commentary. I don't know if he saw himself as a budding evening talk show host or what. But I can remember one, we were watching a fishing show, and the fisherman pulled in a relatively small fish, and Dad looked at the TV, he looked at me, and he says, "He's not going to get a meal out of that."
Yeah, that's a really good observation. So tell us about his service to the country. Where was he stationed? What kinds of missions did he have?
So obviously, he joined the Air Force from Rhode Island, where he grew up. They sent him over to Japan because he joined, right as the Korean conflict was getting started, the Korean War. And then so he was in Japan with an organization. It was called, I think it was the First Radio Group, and it was an Air Force organization. And because he was close enough and he had the right skills, they sent him over in country for a month or two, or 3 or 4, I think. And he was actually in there driving trucks around that had things that go boom on the back of them. He stayed in the transportation field. After he got out after Korea, he came back in. He stayed in the transportation field, and he was up in Alaska, I think, when he was the general's driver. And there's a picture of that, of him standing next to the car, all in his dress uniform with the car nice and shiny. But later on in his career, he got into the Air Force safety field. And one of the things I remember was this was probably just prior to his having to go to Vietnam. that I had an incident happen at school. I think I was in the kindergarten at the time, and I got to have Dad come and pick me up because Mom was off doing something else at the time, and he brought me back to his office. And he worked in an office that was the command center for the Air Force Base that we lived on. It was Fairchild Air Force Base in Washington State, and I kind of walked in and sat down, and he said, "Yes, kind of sit and chill." They got me a soda and a donut or something like that. And there was this never ending stream of people coming into his office to ask him questions. And he always had an answer just right away. And I don't know if the answers were right or wrong. I was only a kindergartner, but it just kind of, it helped me understand the importance of what he was doing and his role as the base safety NCO.
Wow. And Skip, do you have any, or share, maybe you can share a memory or two, about your dad?
My memories are very similar to that. A lot of it had to do with Fairchild Air Force Base. I do remember him being at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. And vaguely, I remember we were in Alaska when Alaska became a state.
Wow.
I remember is Fairchild Air Force Base and Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona.
And when, do you know about when sort of this desire to serve, sort of got into your, or got under your skin?
I think it started right about the transition from 11 to 13 in that vicinity that, yeah, I could do something like this. I just needed the right path. And eventually the right path became the Coast Guard.
Wow, that's super cool. And James, you want to share some stories about your dad or about your service?
Just one about Grandpa. So when he was in Da Nang, I believe he'd always say he did get wounded, and he was the inspector, the safety inspector, and had recently inspected the hospitals and wrote them up for quite a few things. So when he got wounded, they brought him in, and the doctor looked and said, "Oh, it's you. No anesthetic. We'll go ahead and just take care of you." So they stitched him up, and they said, "Well, you were wounded. You get the Purple Heart for that." And he said, "No, I don't want that." Oops, sorry. He said, "No, see that guy over there? He's actually in much worse shape. Give it to him."
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that sure is, an insight into the nature of something I learned about from a general many years ago. He said, "We serve in silence."
And that just shows his character too. Even though you're supposed to get honored for that, he said, "No, I'm okay. Go help that guy."
Yeah, and Dave, during this period of time, or even now, even this moment right now, live, as you're, seeing your family and learning or sharing a little bit about your lives. I mean, you must feel incredibly proud.
Oh, I do. Every minute.
He's got a collection of all of our American flags that we had up at Grandpa's house. He kept all those.
Never throw a flag away.
That's right. But you also got the most important one, Dave.
Yeah.
Which one was that?
The coffin draped one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. And Bob, so I know from our previous conversations, your dad passed away, I guess about 2 years ago now.
Right. Be 2 years on the 22nd.
And what was that like, when you laid him to rest?
It was a challenge for me, but it was also a challenge for everybody else. This was at the height of the COVID outbreak, and we were told that it could only be family at the service. and so we did the best we could to pack the room with as much family as possible. But we did have the opportunity for the Air Force Honor Guard to present the flag, do the flag folding, and that's where I think Skip and I had a brief conversation about, well, let's make sure they hand it to Dave.
Yep.
And
But,
Skip,
kind of the theory behind that is both Skip and I are entitled to, funeral with military honors from our service, and our families are going to get a flag.
yeah, and Skip, what was the experience like for you? I hope this is not too personal.
Yeah. No. What Bob said was right. We decided that Dave should have the flag because, again, as he said, we'll be receiving our own at one point in our lives. As far as everything, just the recitation of Dad's accomplishments was very moving for me. Of course, we all just knew him as Dad or Grandpa, but he did some amazing things.
Oh yeah.
What would be an example, of an amazing thing that you really recall?
Well, the fact that just generally that he survived 2 different wars.
Yeah. Which wars? Just so our audience knows.
So he survived Korea and he survived Vietnam.
Right.
Yep. And Vietnam was no cakewalk because he was there during the Tet Offensive.
Yes, he was in Da Nang at the during the Tet Offensive.
And well, then he was, at the epicenter of the combat action. Is that accurate?
For part of it, and just to add a little humor, the incident that Jay spoke of, Deb was responding to an air raid call, and a shed behind him was targeted and blew up. And let's just say Deb was running north, and the object hit him on the southern side.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's why another one of the reasons why he didn't want to have the award of the Purple Heart, because then he'd have to explain how that happened.
Oh man, you're reminding me of a scene in Forrest Gump.
Yes, exactly.
James, is that
Yeah.
comparable?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When he saw that, he laughed when he was watching the movie.
I think Forrest Gump said the president asked him, where did you get hit, son? And I think he replied, in the buttocks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But Dad took that kind of thing with that was just part of the danger that went along with service, and there were probably other times in his career where he was faced with threats, but never as much as when you're inside of a combat zone.
And how long was he in that area?
I want to say 18 months. Was that what his tour?
No, it was just a little bit over a year because he got delayed coming out.
Yeah, he had a little delay on the way out.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine, a year with that level of intensity, and the risk associated about it. Were any of you? I'm not sure exactly how to ask this, but were you scared? When he was over there?
Every minute.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but I had kind of a little bit of a soothing thing. There's a picture of Dad that was taken before he went over there, and Mom had it up on the mantle. And I swear that as I was walking through the living room, the eyes were following me.
Wow.
So, kind of funny a little bit, because my brother decided to play with that picture when we were clearing out Dad's effects. Thanks, Skip.
Still looking at us.
Yeah, he was still looking at us, and I think that kind of in the back of my mind, I knew that he was watching over us, and that was going to be great.
And is it sort of accurate to say that you still have sentiment that he's watching over you?
I still think he is.
Yeah, I think he went and had breakfast with Mom.
That's what he said he was going to do.
Yep.
And how do you guys, as we're kind of beginning to wrap up here, this moment is the first time I've had the privilege of listening and learning, in this way about service to a country. How do you feel at this moment as you're shining the light on your dad?
I think he's someone that needs a light shined on him. He was in the places he was. He did what he did. I'm proud of his accomplishments.
Yeah. And he never complained about it. That was the thing that just, I always remember is that, he came home and he never complained about what happened over there.
So as we're wrapping up here, James, do you have any closing thoughts that you would like to share with our audience?
Nothing I can really think of right now. I just wanted to thank you for helping us out with this. This is great. I would have never expected anything like this, and honestly, I can't wait to show all the guys at work.
Well, really, I'll end the way I began. Thanks to you, actually, and your family for your service, for everything that you've done. And Skip, what final thoughts do you have that you'd like to share?
I'm very proud of my father, my youngest brother, and my son for having kept going on this path.
Yeah.
And I hope that I have another generation, and I have at least one or two that are thinking of continuing this path in the grandchildren.
Oh man, you must be very, very proud.
I hope they decide and make their own decisions. But if they want to do this, this is a way of giving back.
Yes, it is. Well, that's terrific. And well, thanks to you and your family, past, present, and future generations for sure. And Dave, do you have final thought you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, we do this one day a year, but it's 365 days. We honor them all.
Indeed, that's a terrific sentiment, and thank you, so much for sharing that. And the last word will be with you, Bob, and on behalf of a grateful digital universe, thanks to all of you for who you are and what you do and what your family has done, and for your dad setting such an incredible example. Well, Bob, as we're wrapping up here, first of all, thanks again for sharing your wonderful stories about your dad and about your family and for all of their service. Is there anything you'd like to leave with our audience on this Veterans Day?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you, Gary, for entertaining our family and for helping to honor Dad in this way.
You're welcome.
One of the things that I kind of want to just make sure is out there is that this wasn't just for the 20 plus years he served in uniform. This has been Dad all along,
Right.
in serving his fellow human. And that was what we were brought up with, and all of us have varying degrees of intensity in our on our service. But from all of us being in Boy Scouts to the things that we do in adult life, it is all about dedicating to serving humanity, and that's really what veterans are all about. And that's an important thing that we're doing on this Veterans Day is, highlighting the work of one veteran, but also, several others in our family. And it's just so important because, the long nights away from family, the number of holidays missed, the moving all over the place. That just is a part of military life. And, on Armed Forces Day, we honor those who are serving. On Veterans Day, we honor those who have served. And, occasionally, and, in the last 30 plus years, we've had to celebrate Memorial Day, which is remembering those who did not make it home. And I always like to focus on the ones who are serving and the ones who have served, and honor them every day rather than just waiting until they have to fold that flag.
Indeed. And I hope in a small way what we did today is going to help, because this will live in perpetuity. I hope it gets shared widely within the veterans community and beyond, because these are important stories. You are important people to the past, present, and the future of our country. And again, on behalf of a grateful country, thank you so much.
Thank you, Gary.